Stranger Things is more than just another streaming series. It is the blueprint for streaming television. It is easily one of, if not the biggest shows in the streaming wars. This was a show that put Netflix on the map. It became a cultural phenomenon and global franchise overnight. Now that season 5 is here, it is more relevant than ever to revisit this franchise. I rewatched every season, and in this video, we're going to take a deep dive into Stranger Things. We will go over what went right, what went wrong, and by the end, we will see what this series has done to the world today, and where it is going. Now, in order to discuss the entire series, we need to understand what this show is all about. Back when the Duffer brothers cooked up Stranger Things, they weren't just creating another show. They were creating the blueprint for modern streaming, an effort that changed the game, whether you like it or not. Their idea was to make a show around these kids in the 80s, similar to movies they grew up with such as E.T. or Jaws, along with plenty of Stephen King inspirations like It, Firestarter, and The Institute. Finally was real life history. The Duffer brothers found the experiments during the Cold War very interesting. All this combined together made Montauk, which was the original title at the time. But the one singular factor that holds the show up is friendship. Mike, Luke, Dustin, and Will aren't just normal kids. They feel like they were pulled right from the 80s. Their souls are what make this show work so well. Even as they grew older, we as the audience grew with them. We saw them find out so much about the darkness in Hawkins, so we see everything they are for the first time. Then there's the setting of the show, the cherry on top that hooks all of us in, the 1980s settings. Despite most of its viewers not being from the 80s, it still found an audience. The show is about how nostalgia for that time can blend into storytelling. It was this blend of coming-of-age drama and 80s nostalgia that made it work. It is the formula that every season, including season 5, has been trying to do. So when it all started, that formula was done so well, it became more than a masterpiece, but a new standard in television storytelling. But how did it all start? Well, let's go back in time to figure that out. On July 15th, 2016, everything changed as Stranger Things premiered all its 8 episodes at once. To not only critical acclaim, but at the time it was Netflix's third biggest show. It became a cultural phenomenon and set Netflix up for good. Most streamers are dying for that one show that everyone tunes into, and Netflix really started this with Stranger Things. This wasn't meant to be a franchise, but it was so great that whatever came next, people were on board. Nobody expected this to be a hit, but instead it became the map for Netflix to follow. But let's cast aside the importance of this show, as that is not an important aspect right now. The story is such a great one. As I said, we follow a group of kids in Hawkins, Indiana, trying to find their friend Will. Then they meet someone who has been experimented on who is a superhuman. With the help of her, they go and find Will. In its simplest form, it's just a murder mystery story. All it begins in the first episode, which I watched for the first time a few months ago before season 5 dropped. This episode had absolutely no right being as good as it was. It's not the best episode of TV ever, but it's still really impressive. The show is ground level mystery, not the franchise of the next few seasons. Like we mentioned, when the kids find out everything, you are too. The Duffer brothers understand if you make us connect with the characters, then the connection to the mystery is that much more intense. The opening scene in the room where someone runs demonstrates a lot about the tone. How creepy it would be, but also seeing the kids playing D&D showcasing a lot of that fantasy, even foreshadowing what's to come perfectly. Then when Will gets taken, everything changes. From that very moment, you are hooked in. The characters are insanely likable and relatable. Even outside of the kids, you are fully on board with them. They are all serviceable in the story in their own ways, and are all searching for the same thing. The reason as to why Will Byers disappeared. When it comes to the driving force of the plot, it works because of the mystery around Will. Why did he go missing? Who took him? Where did he go? There is a plot around this entire season. Meanwhile, Joyce Byers is trying everything in her power to find her son, even seeing supernatural things that make her seem crazy. With her and Hopper going to search for him, they find out a lot about Hawkins' lab and what they have been doing. In Hawkins' lab, they do experiments on many people using energy from the upside down. That doesn't even include what happens with the Demogorgon. What Nancy and Jonathan's investigations lead to in finding Will, even Will Byers being found and what that does to him, or else sacrificing herself, that is a lot of stuff in one season of 8 episodes. So how does it work? Well, simply put it, the Duffer brothers put a lot of balance into all of it. Later on, it would lose some of that, but early on, it never felt like they did too much or failed to get us to care about these characters and its story. The way they got us to understand what was going on and use so much stuff in the process, yet it all works, is really impressive. And you have to give praise towards the score. What Michael Stein and Kyle Dixon did is some of the most iconic TV music ever made. Even as the show hit its worst moments, the score always cooked. It feels like they pulled an old John Williams soundtrack. It's pure 80s nostalgia and horror, and it's so effective. This wasn't a big fight to save the world like the later seasons would be. This was a small-scale, intimate story. It's about finding Will and the friendship surrounding it. But let's talk about the characters of this story. As I said, the characters are insanely likable. Let's start with the adult characters of this show, since they are leading the charge. Starting with Joyce. The idea of a broke mother doing anything to save her family opens up many possibilities. Joyce is dealing with a lot of stuff, and despite what is happening, she believes Will is out there. She's determined, protective, and resilient. Jim Hopper as well is really compelling more about who he is. He is a broken man because of the death of his daughter Sarah. Regardless, this character is a conflicted character, but he is always on the search for truth. He's basically a fun 80s cop with a lot more layers in his complexity. But let's move on to the kids of this show, because they are the heart of this series. The crazy thing is, it almost never was. The Duffer brothers kept getting denied and said they would only make it if they removed the kids. And deciding to stick to their vision was the smartest choice, because let's be real, in no world would this show work without them. You have Mike Wheeler, who is a leader and is very smart, Dustin, who is the most devoted and funny of the group, Lucas, who is the most cautious and problematic of the party, Will, who is the most nervous and scared in the series. When the party meets 11, there is tension in the group. Mike starts developing feelings for her. Meanwhile, the others, mainly Lucas, are skeptical about her, but they grow a bond together and grow closer together because of Elle. It's why her death is that much more heartbreaking. It's the attachment we formed with these characters. But let's get into 11 herself. Millie Bobby Brown is simply fantastic. Unlike the others who are driven off of chemistry and their nerd culture, Elle is silent, and Millie's eyes are the performance. You don't need her to say 1,000 words when her eyes say it all. That innocence and trauma, it's all there. There are a lot of characters in this show that are also done really well. Nancy searching for Barb adds a lot to her character, who at the start seemed unlikable. Jonathan's search for the truth is also very compelling. Even what Steve is going through when it comes to his redemption. Now, a lot of people will tell you this show should have ended on the first season, and to an extent, I understand where you are coming from. The season is very standalone, and if it ended here, it would have been perfectly satisfying. Everything the season did was so well done that it felt perfect, even with its minor issues. It was a great season of television. Overall, season 1 is just timeless. It's a perfect start to this amazing show. It balanced a great story with multiple plot points very well, but also had great characters that were just the cherry on top. After the success of season 1, a renewal was inevitable. It was never meant to be a multi-season show, but you don't end something this successful. For me, season 2 is the weakest season until the final season happened. It carries on what made the first season great, but it has more issues this time around. Now, let's address the elephant in the room right off the bat, because the biggest problem of season 2 is the lost subjects at Hawkins' lab. This is by far the weakest element of this season, no doubt. Not that it's entirely pointless like a lot of people make it out to be, but the way they're here, they just make a lot of the scenes just boring. A lot of people like to act like this is nothing but filler, and I do understand where you're coming from to an extent. It does progress a lot of the plot between Elle and her trying to find herself. It makes her realize that this is not where she belongs with her friends at Hawkins. Sure, it is a bit repetitive, but for the character, it just works given the context. The issue is, it is just boring. When I am watching it, most of the time, I just went on my phone. It takes it into a darker direction, which is interesting. While it progresses Elle's arc, it doesn't do anything for the game. Collie is a nothing burger character, and so are the rest. It is a generic subplot that just feels lifeless. It is like Netflix wanted to make a spin-off that, let's be real, nobody wanted. But that major problem aside, this season is still really good. The way they took the story was just as interesting as season 1. It focuses on the ramifications of season 1, and it does it really well. Once again, there is a lot going on, but it balances it still really well. In this season alone, we get introduced to many new characters that all progress the plot in some way. There are moral ideas put into play, like how far people will go with their anger, why we shouldn't hide from who we are, and those themes carry the season. I also love how the story revolves around Hopper and Eleven. Now sure, many shows and movies have this trope, but it adds so much depth to their relationship. You just buy it so well because you see the context. He's the only one who knows Elle is alive. The more people know, the more trouble she and everyone else is in. And he isn't wrong. He is totally right. The plot around Will being possessed by the Mind Flayer was really suspenseful, but also showed a lot of the horror elements, not only because of the reactions from the people, mainly Joyce, but also how much we have grown to care for this character. Like, Will has been through enough, so this character is just getting so much sadder. But let's talk about that scene. Probably the best scene in the entire season. The dance that was teased in the last season was so wholesome. Not only seeing Mike and Elle dance, but Dustin struggling to get a dance while others succeeded. Seeing Hopper and Joyce smoking outside like they mentioned they did back in the day. Even Steve seeing how amazing Nancy looks. It was a great scene that propelled this story and characters so much. The character development here is insane. Both new and returning characters are just incredible. You really notice a lot of this with Steve specifically. Believe it or not, when Stranger Things first came out, this character got so much hate, but the last season set him up for a redemption arc. This is what I mean where the season focuses on the aftermath. Now that Steve redeemed himself, he is more calm about his choices. He wants to have a relationship with Nancy, but something keeps getting in the way. He has a complete identity crisis, and in this season, he goes on a journey of self-discovery. It's why his relationship with the party is so vital. Mainly through Dustin, he finds a reason to keep going. He goes from a bully to someone willing to protect virtually everyone. He becomes Dustin's mentor and teaches him a lot, and Dustin teaches him a lot too, but also being a rival to Steve Hargrove. He learns to grow and become much better than who he was, which Hargrove is representing who Steve once was and was just a whole lot worse. Since we were on the Hargroves, well, let's talk about him. Because this character is where you see a lot of the Stephen King inspirations front and center. He's an abusive and violent man thanks to his childhood trauma. He was abused by his father and brought that into his stepsister Max. He is 10 times scarier than anyone in the Upside Down. In its simplest form, this is just your classic 80s bad boy with plenty of Stephen King inspirations. But his rivalry with Steve is honestly why this character just works. As I said, they mirror each other. Billy is what Steve could be if he stayed the way he was. But it's not just limited to his role with Steve, but also Max. When he sees her talking with Lucas, he literally grabs her and tells her not to see him again. Even at the finale, when he sees Lucas, he decides to grab him and attack him. Max was also a really cool character, but the idea she's basically meant to be as this replacement towards Elle, but she is nothing like Elle. If anything, she's more like the boys. It's why Mike acts so harshly to her. It's not because she annoys him like he claims, it's because she is a replacement for Elle. But she really gets along with Dustin and Lucas. Even starts dating Lucas by the end, and it adds a lot of chemistry between the two. It adds weight and a whole lot of fun between the characters. Essentially, she is the character out of place. She is trying to fit in but keeps getting turned down. Even when she is told what really happened, she doesn't believe them. Or when she isn't letting them into the meets, and by the end she's let in. Now I will say, on the topic of Mike, he is kind of sidelined this season. It's nothing terrible, but all he does is mope around all season. He is focused on finding Elle that his character takes a step back because of it. When he is with Elle, that is where this character is at his strongest, something the later seasons would show to a distracting degree. Now before I move on, I gotta talk about Bob Newby, played by Sean Astin. This character is Joyce's new love interest, but it just works. Most times this forced love interest thing happens and it either fails or works really well. Not only did it work, but it is an extremely likable character. It's not just because of his relationship with Joyce, even though that's a big reason, but also his relationship with Will, which he becomes really attached to him. The two become really close. In a way, he is like the father he always wanted, and that's why this character works. So when he gets killed by one of the demo dogs, it is so much more tragic. Because he didn't deserve to die. He was one of the only real characters that was truly good. Outside of the new characters, the rest of the cast have some really great moments. Like I said, Elle and Hopper, but even away from that, take moments with Will and his mom or Nancy and Jonathan. There are just a lot of little things to piece apart from this alone. Overall, season 2 is really good, but it isn't perfect, with that one awful subplot it has. But what it does with its character work and just upping the stakes makes it so much fun. Without a doubt to me, and this may be a hot take, but Stranger Things 3 is the best season of the entire show. When you look at the story itself, it is so intriguing. Let's start with the introduction of the Starcourt Mall. This was a really cool introduction that added a lot of weight to the characters, but also becoming the main focus of this season. The Russians have taken it over and trying to make a portal to get into the Upside Down. After getting a year deadline, they are ready to use them all as a decoy for what is really about to happen. It's a new level of terror in this show. Speaking of terror, we have to mention the return of the Mind Flayer. He is back, just with Billy Hargrove as his host, which unlike Will, now he is with a host who is an actual piece of shit. So now the horror you get is just amped up. We even get to know more about Billy as a character. But let's turn back to the Starcourt Mall because there's a lot to discuss. First up, this thing looks incredible. Like, it's seriously expensive. Of course, you got Steve working at Scoops Ahoy, but also the sequence of Eleven and Max getting along. It is a scene that shows Elle for once in her life being normal. We also see Steve, Dustin, Robin, and Erica find out about the Russians, which is where a lot of the mystery in this season lies. The battle in the Starcourt Mall is genuinely incredible. Seeing the team try to get the Mind Flayer away from Elle, but also Hopper, Joyce, and Murray take down the Russians, Dustin talking to Susie and showcasing a lot of his childhood innocence. Even the action was incredible. This episode was just fantastic. I want to go further into the never-ending story scene though. Sure, you could argue this scene is pointless, but to me, this is just a wholesome moment. The entire season, he is laughed at and people think Susie is fake. But then they get to sing to that so Dustin can get the code. For one heartfelt moment, it is just Dustin and Susie, even if the others are listening. With the battle, there are, of course, consequences to it. The biggest of them is the death of Hargrove and Hopper. Billy goes on a redemption arc and it is just so satisfying. Hopper, on the other hand, died to save Joyce by destroying the machine. Sure, he didn't really die, but still, it was emotionally effective. By the end, we see Eleven and the Byers go to California, which will continue into season 4. But also Mike and Eleven saying they love each other. And the gate closes, they can all go on to new beginnings. If they wanted to end it here, it also would have been perfect. The characters of season 3 are as expected. Well, then again, most of the time the party is separated, but they still do a lot for the story. For them, it was really their relationships between each other that carried. Like we mentioned with Mike and Eleven saying they love each other, but also Elle and Max becoming besties, Will just wanting to play D&D, they're starting to grow up and the season really focuses on that. When Will destroys Castle Byers, it's not only a great character moment, it's a tragic moment. It's him realizing it's time to grow up. It's a sad and painful truth, and despite all the shit Noah Schnapp gets nowadays, credit where it's due, he was doing a great job here. Meanwhile, Joyce and Hopper are out searching for the Russians. In this season, you really see a lot of romantic tension between the two. It is kind of forced, but it's still kind of nice to see. Murray is even trying to make it happen so they can stop bickering. He isn't even wrong, like it's obvious, there is tension. It's why Hopper's death hits even harder, because now Joyce lost another potential love interest. I will say, the way Hopper acts is probably the biggest issue of the season. It's a character regression of the highest order. All he does is yell and bully at Mike and Joyce, which to be fair, the stuff with Mike was really funny. But at times, it's like a missing character instead of the Hopper we know and love. Jonathan and Nancy are now working at a local paper. They treat Nancy like a joke, but once she finds out something, she goes to investigate. In these moments, we get a great scene between Nancy and her mom. It's a scene that really lets Nancy become her own person. It does lead to her getting fired, but she's better off because of it. So let's move on to the new characters, starting with Robin. I really like what they did with this character. One extremely likable character and grows really close with Steve. That bathroom scene where Steve is making it sound like he likes her, but she says she is gay and starts joking about Tammy Thompson. It is one of the best points of levity this series can offer, and thanks to her genius, she is able to decode the Russian codes. Erica is even given a lot more to do this time around. I will say this character is a little annoying at times, especially early on. She does improve in the next season, but her scenes with Dustin are just great. It adds a lot to her character, but also how she is as a person. She's a nerd, but not like them. She's just mainly into math and stuff. Stranger Things 3 is by far the best season of the show besides the first. The stakes are higher than ever before, the writing and character work is incredible, and production value is on the level of a feature film. The Duffer brothers found a perfect balance between the character drama while also giving us a grand, epic season in its own right. Something that season 4 would have trouble replicating. Season 4 of Stranger Things is by far the biggest season prior to season 5 at least, and by far the most ambitious, but it also shows that sometimes doing too much at once can lead to many issues in the entire story it's being told. When season 4 hits, it really does hit. First up, the tone is such a switch up and it's for the better. The first few seasons took a more family friendly and imaginative tone. This one on the other end, it's a darker, more mature theme. Along with that, the character work is at its best here. The show both improved on old characters, but also gave us new characters that became fan favorites, even if they aren't on screen that long. I noticed this most with Max. Sadie Sink is just on the top of her game here. She is way more complex, but also broken after the loss of her brother. Being one of the victims of Vecna, you really see this in episode 4, probably one of the best episodes of the entire series. With Sean Levy's direction and the running up that hill in the background, you see everything about this character perfectly. Also, with Will this season, we learn that he is gay and has a crush on Mike. That car scene in episode 7, where he speaks about how Elle's feelings about Mike when he is pulling inspiration from himself, knowing he can't ever have him is a real gut punch. This episode just proves so much emotion, and I love what they did in this episode. We also get to explore a lot of Steve and Nancy's relationship. Steve never truly got over her, and he admits he even dreamed of having a family with her. Without her, the Steve we know today does not exist. It's just a highlight of this season. Nancy's character work is also such an improvement. Don't get it twisted, I liked this character beforehand, but in this season, she really feels like Sarah Connor, along with a dash of Lois Lane. She's intelligent and a strong female character. Her relationship with Robin was also a nice touch. Hopper also survives the attack and his arc comes full circle. When he admits everything wrong with him to Enzo, it's a scene of pure acceptance, but also shows us everything about how far this character has come. How he and Joyce finally get together, it's so satisfying because you feel the chemistry and tension between the two. All the romance last season was brought together. It is done very well. Then there's Joseph Quinn as Eddie Munson. If you do not like this character, something is wrong with you. He steals every scene and his arc is so great to watch. Going from running from the terror to sacrificing his life in order to save Dustin is incredible. Driven by Chrissy, who he may have even had a crush on, along with his relationship with Dustin and Steve, just made him a fan favorite character. There is a reason this season turned Joseph Quinn into a rising star overnight. Then there's Vecna. The use of 11 flashbacks to get her powers back, to Robert Edlund as Victor Creel, to all the origins of the Upside Down and literally everything this series has done, it has all led to this character taking over. Vecna is horrifying, more than anything we have seen in this show before. And he is just getting started here, and Jamie Campbell Bowser is just fantastic in this role. Ending the season with Vecna winning was a stroke of genius. It proves they are dealing with something different. Not some unknown threat from the Upside Down. Now Max is in the hospital and everyone is back for the final battle. However, this season is far from perfect. For a show that has handled balance really damn well, this season is very bloated. There is a lot going on. You got Hopper in Russia, Mike and the gang trying to find Elle, the killings in Hawkins, and the California plot. That is a lot to take in, and it does make the plot feel disconnected. Like, the whole Russia plot is so out of place. It has many great scenes, but at times it just feels unearned. It pulls you right out of the entire show. It feels like a way to just bring some Cold War elements into the series, but also to show a fight between the Demogorgon. With the amount of subplots going on this season, you sideline key characters. Characters like Mike and Jonathan barely do anything this season. The pacing is also a total 180. The first seasons are both incredibly fast-paced. This season is very slow though. Now, is this a huge issue? No, except for one thing it causes a problem for. That being the ending. When things are picking up, it just ends. The runtimes of these episodes are just insane. I'm not joking when I say these episodes are the length of a feature film. I don't think any show has ever done this before, but I applaud the Duffer brothers for doing this leap. You could argue it adds a lot to the issues, but given how long we had to wait for these episodes, yeah, I don't mind this. Also, some of the stakes aren't as big, again, some of them, because when Eddie dies, dear God, it is so sad to watch. But then they decide to bring back Max instead of killing her. It was a lazy move that removed a lot of the stakes from the entire story. The final issue this season has is the lack of ground level stakes. The stakes are higher and the amount of stuff happening is overstuffed, so the smaller scale storytelling is gone, all for more CGI and action set pieces. Stranger Things Season 4 is very flawed. It's solid, but it's not perfect. When it hits, it really does hit, but because it decides to do too much and go too ambitious, it loses some of its steam. But it sets the stages for a final season that would conclude the series for good in 3 years' time. And as if the bloated nature wasn't bad enough, it became even worse in Season 5. So after the cliffhanger of Season 4, the franchise hype was at an all-time high. Then after a 3-year-long gap, it finally released. But did it stick the landing? Did they deliver the show that was worth the time? Well, yes, but also no. So in this section, we are going to do something different. Since this was split up into 3 parts, we are going to go part by part. They took a small time jump. Now everyone is in Hawkins and is under martial law. How they go to school and how the military controls it all, it's all done very well in terms of its explanation. Now the only issue I got with this time jump is we skip over key moments. For example, Robin is now dating Vicky. This was teased in the last season, but I don't like how they are just automatically together. Sure, they haven't gone on their first date yet, but it's an issue you have with time jumps. You miss that progression. I want to talk about Robin in particular. We see a great new bond with her and Will. This one to me was a decent enough plot point. It does carry a lot of weight that the story very much needed. It makes sense story-wise and carries through the entire plot. Not to mention how Will and Robin interact, it's pretty damn effective. There is a fantastic scene between the two where Robin starts talking about Tammy Thompson and her accepting her sexuality. She saw the same way Will looked at Mike and could tell exactly what he was going through right then and there. And that conversation between the two was incredible. It also shows how well the chemistry the actors have. But speaking of Will, well, let's talk about him. I know I have gave praise for that scene where Will breaks down in season 4 and I stand by that point, but at times, Noah Schnapp can just fall flat. And then he nails his scenes with Maya Hawke. It's very 50-50 at times. Having said that, Will is the beating heart of this season because of how well done the execution is around this character. That scene with Robin is important for Will accepting who he is even outside of his sexuality. We also find out what Vecna did to Will. It confirms what we thought for the longest time. Will is a Horcrux. I know the Harry Potter reference, but it's true. Vecna did exactly what Voldemort did. He marked Will as his equal. We also got a lot more of Mike's sister Holly, who in the past was just there, I guess. Now Vecna wants her and is given an actual role this time around. She even meets Max and the two have a connection. How they are trapped in this prison with some great horror scenes, like that scene with her and Mike, is so good. Dustin is also still dealing with the aftermath of Eddie's death, even getting his ass kicked because of wanting to bring back Hellfire. Compared to the others, he is a complete mess. Eddie was the only mentor figure he had besides Steve. Now, he is gone and people are calling him a murderer. It's taking a bit of a toll on him and the season carries that home. But let's talk about Vecna, because my god, the Duffer brothers teased him for being terrifying. They really pushed its TV-14 rating in certain scenes. When he wrecks shop, it makes him feel like a real threat. We also get plenty of new characters this season. We get a kid who is basically the live-action Eric Cartman. Annoying at times, sure, but man, he is also so entertaining. Then there's what he did with this sister. After years of crapping on season 2's filler episode, they actually paid it off, and it really surprised me. I thought they were going to ignore this as a whole. Now, I want to get into the tone. They brought back many horror elements. Even though this show has evolved into a Hollywood franchise, a lot of those roots still remain in the entire show. Those small character moments that feed the coming-of-age storytelling. It feels very fitting with how this show has been established. Then we have the stellar direction from the Duffers and Levy. While their direction is really good, I want to talk about Frank Darabont. The man behind Shawshank Redemption directed 2 episodes of this season. He was a fan of this show and decided to come out of retirement for this season. And my god, his direction is fantastic. But for everything Volume 1 gets right, there are plenty of issues. For example, when Steve and Jonathan are arguing over Nancy, all I can say is this gets really annoying after a while. It's a generic subplot that is so predictable, especially since Jonathan wants to propose to her until they break up. And don't worry, I'm going to get to that later. Mike is doing absolutely nothing this season besides towards the end. Outside of that scene with Holly, that heart of the party isn't present. He is an afterthought for most of this part of the season. Am I saying it's all bad? No. There are times when the leader role is back in the spotlight, especially early on. His scenes with Eleven hit a lot harder this time around, but that's all he is, Eleven's girlfriend, and not Mike, the heart of the group. Speaking of Eleven, well, let's talk about her. They sideline this character like crazy. She's reduced to Rise of Skywalker training along with not being trusted with her own powers. She lifts things perfectly before, now she can barely lift a truck. Like, what? It's a total waste of a great character. Luke at this point is just doing absolutely nothing besides standing up for his friends and visiting Max. Hopper is mainly training Eleven and gets stuck in the Upside Down in the beginning. Joyce on the other end is very protective throughout the entire season. Most of them are just doing stuff we either already seen or nothing at all. I also want to talk about that scene where the Demogorgon goes after Holly Wheeler. It's a fantastic horror scene, but what I don't like is that they chickened out in not killing Mrs. Wheeler. It would have added so much more emotion. Instead, they copped out. The whole military plot, I just don't care about that. Like when Vecna came in, I was rooting for him to take them out. They are stereotypical characters and it isn't interesting at all. Like Linda Hamilton, Dr. K, very generic badass. Also, Hawkins is supposed to be in quarantine. So why does it just feel like nothing has happened? Like the town got a black hole from the upside down. Wouldn't they take more procedures to make sure things won't happen again? It's a strange device that seemingly is just not used at all. Then there's the bullying subplot. Look, at the start it was fun, but now it's just very played out. Especially since the people bullying Dustin are just not compelling at all. Even when Dustin and Steve have a fight, like, what? That being said, I think overall this is a good start to the season. It's not perfect, there are many great episodes, but also some moments that miss the mark. But episode 4 was fantastic, the horror and character work is at large here, and the moment it ends, I was still interested in what happens in volume 2. After the events of the first part, it was here where things really got a lot worse. I had issues with the first half, as I made very clear, but while yes, it has a lot of great, it's more problematic. I've seen some call this awful, which I fully disagree with. Will is just the MVP. Again, Noah Schnapp is not giving it his best, but the writing and direction is holding this character up. We see him being Vecna's vessel, and it really affects him. He blames himself for what happened, not just in that moment, but for literally everything that's ever happened to him. From Will, we learn a lot from Vecna. He sees his secrets, all the good and all the bad, all of from his past to his present. He uses it against him, and that really affects him. He talked about a vision, and he got it, and it made him feel alone. It made him more afraid than ever. Turning over to the other characters, there's a lot of payoff, even away from Will. The love triangle is finally resolved for the better. Nancy says that while Steve is great, she doesn't feel the same way, even how she and Jonathan aren't ready yet, or maybe ever. Then we get both Holly and Max escaping. When Max wakes up in episode 7, everyone is killing it, especially Caleb McLaughlin. Now, does this scene overstay its welcome? Yes. It does also be very reliant on exposition, but it is also a lot of great character moments and parallels to what Lucas is doing in the hospital. That is good enough to make this a well-made, thrilling sequence. But hey, since I'm talking about where Vecna is, let's talk about that. We finally find out the true origins of the Upside Down and Vecna's plans. He is in a place called the Abyss and is trying to merge the world with the real world, creating a big nightmare for everyone. Vecna has every piece in place to make sure his plan works, but the team has a plan to stop it. We also discover a place in Hawkins' lab in the Upside Down. Dustin finds Brenner's notes and discovers something crucial. In the middle, there is a sphere that is basically holding up the entire Upside Down. He tries to stop Nancy, but it doesn't work because of a fight with him and Steve that broke their comms. Now, a lot of people have called this part like a boring filler part because nothing happens, which just proves to me something. Either you didn't watch it, or you didn't understand what was going on. In this volume, Max returned, we learn what the Upside Down is, Vecna's plans, and more importantly, Will coming out. Are you trying to tell me nothing happened with all of that? If you don't like what happened, that's fine, but don't make up lies just to join in the dumb internet hate. Once it's over, everyone is together, which to me is a massive plus. It isn't like what happened with season 4 where everything is all over the place. The whole group is in one place, from the big ones to 11 to smaller ones like Vicky. Even Mrs. Wheeler has a moment. Everything is built up to an epic finale. But the build up comes at a price. It sidelines many key elements in favor of setting up the finale. Which I get it's the end and you want to get it right, but in turn it made plenty of crucial mistakes that hindered the entire season. Firstly, I despise what they did with 11 in volume 2. Millie Bobby Brown is given nothing to do because she doesn't do anything. To put it into perspective, Holly has more to do than 11 and most of the main cast. And boy, it is frustrating. All 11 does is get questioned by Kali, and yes, there is greatness there, but it's just not enough. It's a total waste since we have been through this before. Same goes for Joyce. She's at her best when she's with Will. I would argue this is even worse than what they are doing with 11, because she is the reason the show is what it is. Her love for Will is there, but the soul of Joyce is missing. Then you got the Jonathan and Nancy scene. While it's emotional, don't get me wrong, the way it ended was so confusing. I thought I was alone, but a lot of people felt the same way. It is such a strange writing choice. We also got to go back to the scene where Will comes out, but there are two key issues here. For one, Noah's performance is just bland. He makes it less impactful because of it. Also, the execution just isn't there. The writing is also just very safe. It does things beat for beat with the past. endless exposition just for our benefit. It's not even like it's bad, but by Stranger Things standards, this is lacking in comparison. But the biggest issue with Volume 2 is the lack of stakes and consequences. Remember when the penultimate episode of Season 4 dropped? You felt the stakes. But because they chickened out in killing Mrs. Wheeler, when Nancy shoots the vortex she and Jonathan live, even their plan isn't the best, so the stakes just don't feel high. It has too much plot armor that I just feel nothing. This part is basically an imbalanced volume. I do think a lot of the hate around it is utter nonsense, but there are plenty of issues. If you binge this part, I think you're going to enjoy it a lot more, but since we are going volume by volume here, it's worth mentioning how uneven this section is. It prioritizes setup and sacrifices key characters in the process, but it does lead us to the final countdown with Volume 3. So Volume 2 came out and showed some red flags towards the finale. Maybe it was going to be another Game of Thrones situation. But then, I sat down to watch the finale, and boy, I got a lot of thoughts on this one. Let's start with 11. After all that sidelining, it became kind of an afterthought. But the problem is that the script is just not helping. There are some great scenes with her and Hopper, but then she has some god-awful dialogue in some scenes. Then we got the death scene. It felt like such a great ending to her character. Her arc was fulfilled. It was the only way that she could have died. And after how underused she was, I was concerned. I will say some of the line delivery wasn't the best, but Millie is doing way better now that she has more to do. Mike again doesn't do much, but once 11 dies, it's very heartbreaking. We get an 18-month time jump, which was a kind of strange decision, but wasn't horrible by any means. When he is talking to 11 and you hear Purple Rain, you don't question anything. You just feel his heartbreak, especially during the bench scene. Then you got Will. He is once again the MVP of this series. He is crucial to the plot, and towards the end when they play D&D again, man, it's so nice. That's all he ever wanted. Finally, he is just with his friends, having fun. When we get towards the end with Dustin's speech, it was a great scene. Instead of trying to move on, he decides to rebel, honoring Eddie like he always wanted, even giving the principal the finger. Now, I know I've been complaining about the love triangle, but the scene between Jonathan and Nancy, that's great. It shows both are just not right for Nancy. It's not a situation where they break up and Steve gets with her. No, he realizes he is also not right for her, and he would rather have her as a friend than nothing at all. I also love how they didn't give Vecna a redemption arc. Will tries to talk some sense into him, but no, he is just a crazy dude. He isn't a dude who can suddenly become good. He is a force of nature for a reason. His connection to the Mind Flayer was also cool, seeing him as a vessel. He was a villain and not some dumb fan theory nonsense. Now I will say, despite how much I can't stand Callie this season, I think her death scene was done pretty well. She is still very annoying, don't get me wrong, but her redemption arc was pretty good. But just as this episode was looking to be a miss for me, something saved it. Let's talk about the epilogue. It is utterly great and a fantastic way to end many of these characters. With them going their separate ways, it's a nice way to show how far they have come. Also, Steve coaching baseball is just great. In a way, he got his 6 nuggets. Now, obviously, a big talking point is Mike's theory. What he thinks will happen with his friends and, of course, 11. A lot of people are thinking this is up to interpretation, kind of like Inception, but the Duffer brothers said it was just a theory. But while it's a good finale, there are still issues here and there. As we mentioned, the last episode, the stakes didn't feel real. And yeah, it comes together here. The plot armor is insane. Like, they make us think Steve was gonna die. Then Jonathan saves them. Nancy is about to die. Then she doesn't. Now, I'm not saying every character needs to die. This isn't Game of Thrones. But death increases the stakes. It makes them feel real. And when it doesn't happen, you just don't feel anything. The final battle goes way too quickly. They just fight Vecna and the Mind Flayer with ease. The result is a showdown with zero suspense, zero terror. When a character is about to die, you don't feel scared. Vecna is also kind of wasted here. The moment he is facing his biggest fear, that is a great scene. But then he is taken down with ease. It's a real disappointment since early on he was wrecking shop. With this story doing so much, some characters just get put to the wayside. Again. Max, Lucas, Dustin, Jonathan, and Joyce in particular. But at least it's mainly focused on the characters like Hopper, Mike, and Will, and 11. So at least there's that. Then you got the military in the show. As if it wasn't boring enough, it somehow got even worse. For one, they tossed Dr. K like it was nothing. Second, the entire plot just ends in a very unsatisfying way. Once 11 dies, that's it. No sign of them trying to do something, no scene of them giving up, they just ended on a weak note. The final issue I got with this episode is it's kind of safe. It's very predictable for its final battle. You can tell what is going to happen the moment it starts. To some, this season is an absolute mess, and others, it's a great ending to this fantastic series. For me, I'm right down the middle. It's messy, but also gets a whole lot right. For an ending to this series, it does that very well. It's no Game of Thrones Season 8. Like, if you think that, like, I'm just gonna be honest with you, you're just dead wrong. I don't see any character assassinations in sight. But despite my clear issues, despite me complaining about it for so long, but I'm gonna miss the times when I was excited to see a new season of this show. Stranger Things 5 is both a triumph and a misstep at the same time. When it hits home, it really does. It brings back fantastic horror scenes and character work, but the sidelining of characters like Eleven and Joyce is annoying, along with some paper-thin performances, slow pacing, and weak writing. So after everything with Stranger Things series out of the way, let's take a look at the aftermath. Where does this series lie within the rest of the streaming landscape? Is the OG show the best, or is it another failure? Well, if we are going to answer that question, we got to understand what this series means to the world. When the show first started, it changed the game for better or worse. You can say you didn't love the show, and that's fine, as film and TV is subjective. But you cannot deny how so many people fell in love with this show. The first season dropped, and it was an absolute banger. Season 2 was a good follow-up, but was easily the most flawed of the entire series till Season 5. Then Season 3 upped the stakes in every way and made this show a big event on the scale of a feature film. Season 4 upped it again at the sacrifice of its character and story, but overall was still a good time. And now we have the brilliant but heavily flawed Season 5. The series as a whole is a perfect blend of both comedy horror, but also coming-of-age fantasy. It's a Steven Spielberg movie mixed with Stephen King novels. Those two elements combined make this show so special. That's why we always come back for more. It makes us nostalgic, but also connects with the story at large. Stranger Things' impact cannot be understated. Like we said, it is the poster child for a modern streaming show. It is the start of the way we see shows today. The good this show did was prove how shows can be. Shows can be on the scale of a feature film. They can tell stories with so much depth and nuance that is on the same level. It is a show that changed the landscape as we know it. But it wasn't all good. Because of what they did, we got seasons with long gaps. With short 8-episode seasons, maybe even shorter. Even just Netflix's decision to put gaps in their seasons instead of weekly releases. And it's more frustrating in that aspect because to some, it ruined TV. And I don't blame people for that. So after everything, where does that leave us? Well, for the first time, the franchise is in a bit of a strange spot. The show is a big success and has been received extremely well, but a lot of things are currently up in the air. It's not like it's entirely unclear because there are some things that are clear as day. For example, we got a Stranger Things animated series coming out. This is supposed to be similar to an 80s Saturday morning cartoon, which sounds really cool and looks solid, but then we got a spin-off that is unknown what's going to happen to it. That doesn't even mention the Duffer Brothers' new deal with Paramount. Now, what does that mean for this franchise? The Duffer Brothers said they signed it so they can still be involved in Stranger Things. It's their baby, they want to be there every step of the way. Whatever they do next, whether it's a new show or even like a movie or something, they want to keep that Stranger Things vibe. But they want to be involved as much as possible. Either way, I highly doubt this is the last time we see Stranger Things. This show is one of the most popular Netflix series of all time, not to mention how big of a fan base it has. If we ever live in a world where Stranger Things is put to bed, I'll be really surprised. So, those are my thoughts on Stranger Things. I'm glad I finally got to go through this series, and despite my issues with it, overall, it is still one of my favorite shows we get nowadays. It's a great show that recaptures many classic 80s movie magic, with plenty of nostalgia, horror, comedy, drama, and coming-of-age storytelling. It is everything a streaming show should be. With all of that out of the way, the question is for you guys. Did Season 5 stick the landing? Or is it another bad Game of Thrones style ending? Let me know in those comments down below. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos. We are getting seriously close to the 500 subscriber milestone, and it would mean the world to me if you could help us get there as soon as possible. But until next time, take care.